Hey, USA, it's just me, and as you know, I'm nobody, just an American, and this is just an American moment. This is the podcast where we ask the questions that the mainstream media won't ask or refuse to ask, and we provide the answers and solutions that the political class either can or won't. So, welcome to today's podcast. In preparing for today, I wrote a bunch of stuff down, and I'll tell you, it's almost difficult to know where to begin, although I do. But seriously, do I start right off with the cluster blank in Afghanistan? Do I talk about the outrageous situation at our border? Do I talk about the total indifference by the Biden administration to the growing crime rates in our cities? Do I talk about inflation and how things have gotten out of hand, things that didn't exist a year ago? Do I talk about the failure of the American people when it comes to electing individuals to represent us who ultimately go to Congress and don't represent us at all? Or do I talk about Biden's ambivalent at best uh, COVID plan? Do you wear a mask? Do you not wear a mask? Do you wear a mask if you're vaccinated? Do you not wear a mask if you're vaccinated? What the hell are these people doing? You know, if I decide to start with Afghanistan, though, where do I begin? But before I do that, maybe I should ask, where's the vice president been? Well, we know right now because of the news that she's on her way to Asia, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But she's certainly been invisible, and she's not the only one. Um, where's Nancy Pelosi been up till the weekend when she was in Napa Valley at a fundraiser where no one was wearing a mask? This from the woman who makes everyone in Congress wear a mask. What's that all about? And where's Chuck Schumer been? Oh, I forgot. Chuck's dancing in the streets. He's there with Stephen Colbert, rocking it out. And have you seen Chuck's moves? I think Chuck's better off dancing in the streets than he is being the head of the Senate because he's certainly better at dancing in the street than running the Senate, if that tells you anything. And what about our old buddies, Swalwell and Schiff? Aren't they on the Intelligence Committee? Afghanistan, intelligence. Where are they? But who really cares? And then there's the stealth people, Susan Rice and Ron Klain. Where are they? They're so-called presidential advisors. They are supposedly the most enlightened people in Washington. Yet these seem to be very invisible. Are they running the other direction from Joe? Or did they give Joe all the words that he speaks? I wonder about that. You got to wonder when you think that they had an election where they did nothing but hide Joe Biden in a basement and never answering questions. And now here we are, Joe's in the White House sometimes. And he asks questions that are written down on a piece of paper. He's given the assignment as to who to call on. And when he's done calling on those people, he turns his back and walks away. That is very presidential, Joe. So why isn't anyone in the White House and only a few in the media are ignoring or not talking about Joe's diminished mental competency? Come on. If you don't see it, I don't know what you're smoking. But let's get to the story of the day. And the story of the day is Afghanistan. So the president says we could have never seen how fast Kabul or the country of Afghanistan would have fallen. 20 years of gathering information in that country, CIA agents, all kinds of operatives, and we didn't know the country was going to fall. Who's that on? Who's that on? Is that on the decision maker? Or is that on the people who provided the information to the decision maker? I would say it's always the decision maker. And if they provided bad information, then it shows me that the decision maker wasn't intelligent enough to ask the right questions. So this again is a cluster blank like this country has never seen before. And quite honestly, there's a whole bunch of people who should be either fired or resign because of this. Let's start with, well, I'd start with Rice and Claim, who we never see, so we don't even know if they're doing anything. But I'd get rid of Austin. I'd get rid of Blinken. I'd get rid of Psaki. And if we could, I'd even get rid of Harris, but that can't happen. And, while we're working on it, let's throw Mayorkas in because, quite honestly, even though I'm talking about Afghanistan, the border is so effed up. I don't know if we'll ever survive what happens down there. I'm not going to reiterate today what we heard over the weekend from many of the talking heads. Very few, again, who highlighted Joe's ineptness. But even worse than those who did highlight Joe's ineptness or held back a little bit on Joe's ineptness, you got to look at Martha Ratchett from ABC, who basically was trying to build an excuse, as were the other ABC panelists over the weekend, trying to protect Biden. What a joke. But hey, he's your guy, folks. You supported him, But maybe the real blame for this guy are the American people. At least that part of the country that voted for him. It's the old story. Who are the bigger fools? The fool or the fools who follow the fool? Well, we've seen the fool in action now, haven't we? But when we look at Afghanistan, I'm nobody. I'm just an American. Remember? I wrote the book. I said, I'm nobody, just an American. But as nobody, just an American, I came up with a whole bunch of questions that I'd like to kind of walk through. And by the way, I have a bunch more than this, but just think about a couple of these for now. So excuse me if I have to read off my list a little bit, but I think these are pretty good. So one of the things we did is we saw 630 Afghans on a U.S. military plane. They were packed in, side by side, with no masks and Americans on board. So I've got a question. There's no social distancing. There's no masks. Is there no COVID in Afghanistan? Maybe we haven't been told. Maybe there's no COVID in Afghanistan. But if there is, does anyone see a disconnect here? I do. How about you? And to take it one step further, let's look at the Kabul airport, okay? Look at all the people packed at the airport. Now, they may be outside, but I'll tell you something. They're packed together. And I didn't see anybody wearing a mask there. How come no one even asked the question? Hey, what's the Afghanistan COVID situation like? Should these people really be on top of each other? Should we have not issued masks to them while they wait there on the runway? And they're surrounded by U.S. personnel. What if those people become infected? I guess we have to departmentalize these issues, right? So if you're in Afghanistan waiting for the Taliban to kill you, apparently COVID isn't contagious. So therefore, you don't have to worry about it. Or some kind of nonsense like that. Okay, and, my next question. Where are all these people going? Now, we've heard they're going to Doha, Qatar, and that's fine. But where are they going? They're bragging about taking, since I guess June, 37,000 people out of Afghanistan, which is funny, by the way, because they don't really talk about how many they took out in the last week. They want to focus on how many did they take out since June. And the reality was, between June and August, there weren't a heck of a lot who were removed from the country. But where are these people going? And if they're coming to the United States, I'd like to know, are they going to be screened for COVID before they come here? Are they going to be required to get a vaccination? Are they going to be required to be in quarantine before they go anywhere? And by the way, is the federal government going to ask or tell, I should say, the governors of the states these people go to that they're actually coming, or are they going to do like they do with the border and just fly people in the dead of night and fill our cities around the country? No one asks those questions. Why? I think those questions are irrelevant. Let me see. What else do we have here? Uh, oh, yeah. The most obvious of all. We knew we were getting out of Afghanistan. Now, anyone with common sense, any nobody, just an American, would think, well, okay, we know we want to get out by this date. Maybe we should have our embassy send notices out to all the Americans we know of in Afghanistan and provide them with a plan. And the plan should have a normal, somewhat passive departure from the country, but it should also have a what if plan. What if things go south faster than we anticipated? This is what you must do. Where's that plan? Why wasn't there a plan? You know why? Because you've got an administration. It's not even about being proactive or reactive, although their behavior is reactive. It's always about being political. This administration operates on the politics of the situation, which is why they stand at the podium and lie to the American people on a regular basis. But you got to wonder, even an average business person would know we have to have plans in place, and we have to put those plans in place in advance, and we have to give people clear instructions on what they must do, and we must be able to execute those instructions to aid those people. But I don't think we did. Do you? Okay. Oh, yeah. And the other thing, we're now talking about all the military treasure that we left in Afghanistan. In fact, we've now rearmed the Taliban. Will somebody please tell me why we would just leave helicopters there? I heard a number of 400,000 rifles, other ordinances, other equipment, other vehicles, all left there. If we weren't going to bring it home, would it not make sense to destroy it before we left? Really? Is that a difficult question for the media to ask? Is it a difficult question for the administration to answer? We just armed the enemy. Are we stupid? Unbelievable. Does anyone in the media and the government realize that if they didn't F this withdrawal up so bad that we wouldn't have to be dealing with relocating Afghanis? Does anyone? I don't think so. I don't think so at all. You know, and one of the amazing things, or really funny things about, well, I can't say it's funny. It's not funny. It's pathetic. But one of the interesting things about now trying to get Afghanis who helped us out of Afghanistan, well, anyone old enough to remembers in 1975 when we were leaving Vietnam, Joe Biden, and you can find the tape on this, it exists, it was played over the weekend. Joe Biden spoke against bringing Vietnamese refugees to the United States. What's that all about? You could extend all kinds of inferences about bringing Afghanis is okay, bringing Vietnamese isn't. I don't know. You got to wonder. But, look at Joe's history, and maybe the question will be answered for you. Anybody who's watched Joe's performance over the last 50 years, as I have, knows He behaves like a buffoon. He's a plagiarist. He's a liar. And he's incompetent. And the evidence is there. I'm not making this up. It's there. This shame and embarrassment now befalling our country is not just on Joe Biden now. It is on those who voted for him. And I can't repeat that enough. Unfortunately, if we get rid of him, we have another incompetent. Anyone who knows Harris's history in California, where I used to live, knows all about Kamala Harris. She's a political animal. And by the way, she's never been to Spain. But guess what? She's now going to be able to say she's been to Asia. And don't you kind of wonder, in the midst of all that's going on in Afghanistan, the last woman to leave the room is now in Asia? Well, first she flew to Singapore, and maybe the only thing, in fact, the only reason she's probably welcome in Singapore is Singapore has a fairly large Tamil population. So since her mother was Tamil, maybe there's a relationship there. But then she's going to Vietnam. Now, why is Kamala Harris going to Vietnam? Let's see. Could she be there after Afghanistan to tell the Vietnamese people that we support their claims against China as it relates to the Spratly Islands and will defend their right to claim the Spratly Islands as theirs? I don't think so. I don't think so at all. And by the way, while we're talking about Asia, did anyone see what was announced over the weekend? Did anyone see the fact that Rahm Emanuel was appointed ambassador to Japan? Do you believe this major blank up who drove Chicago into the ground walks away and gets an appointment as ambassador to Japan? Japan that he knows nothing about, doesn't speak Japanese, doesn't know the culture, but because he's a political crony, he gets to become the ambassador to Japan. And all I can say is, what an insult to Japan. I mean, to have a guy like this appointed ambassador is just pathetic. You know, I worked in Asia for 40 years. In fact, I worked around the world for 40 years. And quite honestly, we always found these pompous ass bureaucrats who served in our embassies to be ineffectual and useless. Most of them, the ambassadors and the senior staff there, were appointed because they were either career diplomats or they were donors to the campaign or they were a crony of somebody in the government. They were lazy and they were inept. And they proved itself time and time again. And I could tell more stories than you could imagine about that. You know, my meetings with ambassadors, etc. You know, we used to have a standard joke when I lived in Asia. And it used to be that if anything goes wrong in country, get yourself to the British or Canadian embassies because they will help you get out. The U.S. Embassy, they'll already be gone. And gee, didn't we just see that in Afghanistan? I don't know. These bureaucrats, they're not representatives of the American people. And they do a disservice to us by claiming to be our representatives. But what can I say? Nevertheless, we have a cluster blank in Afghanistan. And I'm not sure right now there's going to be an easy way out of this. So I want to close with a quote, as I've been lately, from my other book. It's a business book called Dodging Bullets, Shooting Back, Surviving on the Corporate Battlefield. And these are the words of Voltaire, but I think maybe Joe Biden ought to pay attention. Voltaire says, doubt is an uncomfortable condition, but certainty is a ridiculous one. Hey, thanks for listening in. Please support me on the book. Like I said, I'm no TV guy. I can't pump my book on a show every night. But it's a good read, and I think you'll find the questions and the answers to a lot of things that you ask about our government and how we operate. Thanks very much. Bye.